Well, hello, Craftinistas. I was sitting in my room getting ready to make some tags, and I took this Jen Hadfield paper pad that I picked up from Tuesday morning a while back, and I saw these little what looked like packets of flower packets and all these little sayings in it. And I thought I'd make a booklet, a spring booklet for tags to go into. It'd be nice to package those inside of a little booklet. So it started out with a piece of paper that was 7.5 by 7.5, and uh, went on and took my 3-inch mark and punch and scored. And then I just lined up my score lines when I turned it and punched and scored again. So just that one initial measurement, and then I just lined up. I just used the one of the measurements on the envelope punch board itself and made an envelope out of that with the 7.5 by 7.5 paper it said to use. So right here I am just punching and scoring, just lining up the previous score mark. Just lining that up, trying to get it straight, making sure that I've got it lined up pretty good. And now I've got all four. I'm going to take, look at on my corners, I'm going to take one of the smaller, just one of the smaller corners here, and I'm going to snip that off. That way I don't need that portion, and then I can slide in my tags into that portion. So that's snipped off and it's ready to go. So now all I'm doing is just getting those corners ready with taking the little corner rounder that's attached to the envelope punch board and just cleaning that up a little bit with those 3 sides. So now I can just take my tool and kind of press down those lines. So now my little envelope with the cut open portion is ready to go. So the next thing I'm going to do is just take my favorite little art glitter glue here and seal down the bottom portion, and then take some glue and then seal down this other portion here, making sure I don't want it to flap open. So I'm just making sure I get good coverage. And now my envelope is prepped and ready, and then I just did the rest of the envelopes that way. So my initial measurements that I used were just the 7.5 and the 7.5 of the paper, and then the 3-inch that I took and used for my initial score and punch. That I just lined up. I just took a piece of light chipboard and just kind of lined up 1/4 of an inch around. So if it was 6, I used 6 1/4. If it was 3 and 3, let's say 3.5, I used, 3 3/4. So I'm not sure what it was, but I just used 1/4 of an inch around, just so it could be a nice cover. Just as I did with the paper, I just used a little bit around. That one maybe a 1/2 inch around there, and just gave it some coverage. So I'm just going to take that and use my score tape and seal that down. I'm using the score tape. I want to make sure that it's nice and secure. And then I just took my corners and cut off a little triangle on the ends, and it made that nice and neat. And then did the same thing on the other side. And that way I have a nice sealed and clean look, and this is a nice backing. And so I did the Same thing, just kind of no measure, just kind of did a little fourth of what I did previously before and just chopped it off, and that way I can have that to cover the back of that, and made sure that it was nice and secure, and that way look, it just like look a seamless look. And so I took up this Teresa Collins punch. I picked this up at a Ollie's discount store a few years back, and I thought that that would be a good marking for me to make my initial. I didn't want to use this the whole time because the holes a little bit bigger than I want. So I just used my crocodile tool for the rest of the punches, and I just hole punched using that measurement because that's a little bit smaller because I wanted to use some eyelets for the rest of it, and it was too big to use the eyelets if I used the Teresa Collins punch on the whole thing, at least for the eyelets that I have in my stash. So I'm just measuring the inside where I want it lined up because I kind of wanted it to have that coverage all around, not exactly at the end. And then I just lined up the rest of them and punched them with the crocodile. There I'm just cutting up some more selections, so I'll have some to choose from, those little flower packets, sayings, sentiments. I glued my ribbon down, and then I just used some pop dots and popped up my sentiment that I wanted on the front. Then used some of that art glitter glue down the middle and put my signature bling on there. Then I'm also going to take some bling and put it just on the top and the bottom of the little sentiment card. Then I took some paper flowers from my stash and also coordinated that blue with it, and just took some fabric tack glue and glued that down. Kind of placed it what I wanted. I'll use the fabric tack, that way I can kind of move it around some. If I didn't have the glue gun, it kind of permanently puts it there. Just put another one in the inside cover. Then I grabbed out my eyelets and went on and used those. Got the paper, so the paper, with turning it, the paper wouldn't rip, so the eyelets kind of secure that in there. And got the back cover ready. Then I decided to use something from my stash. The little ringlets would be good to use, but I decided to use that. It had a little bling on it, and then I just used the little tools to make sure that they were securely wrapped around and wouldn't come loose. Now I can just slide my tags in the top of them, and I really love this project. It's a good way to give away my tags. Hope you enjoyed this, and see you later, Craftinistas.